This is a Liberty Crack Media special.
Hey, is this Randy?
This is Tripp, yeah, and it's Randy. And I'm sorry, I am the one that screwed up. I had my, usually we're calling out instead of calling in, so I had my phone not programmed quite correctly. I want everybody to know who this is, and this is the infamous, and not to be confused with any other Kauffmans. This is Jeremy Kauffman. How are you doing, buddy?
It's great to be on with you. I would like to insist that I take some blame as well, but I'm glad that we're connected.
Here we come, walking down the street. Got the gold, no taxes to meet. Free to speak and free to trade. Markets up, no need for aid. Hey, hey, we're the microphone monkeys. People say we're anarchist flunkies, but we're too busy being free. Hey, hey, we're the microphone monkeys.
Well, we'll just all share our shame together. But it's so great to have you in. We were just about to talk about cinema, but we'll talk about you instead.
Okay, so we just had our 2026 national convention, and there was sort of a left-wing takeover. Evan McMahon became chair, and this is the first action they took as the LNC was to annihilate the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire, 10 counties in New Hampshire, and hundreds of activists in a retroactive retaliatory move. There were two LNC members, Austin and Shaw, that brought up an investigative committee amendment that was completely shot down. I know Susan Hogarth also voted no. This is the first time in 54 years the Libertarian Party has done this. I saw that this is basically the most active state, New Hampshire, on social media. They have like 3 times the followers of Texas and Tennessee and other states by an order of magnitude. And you guys updated everything on your website the other day. What are the updates, or what's the current situation with how New Hampshire is reacting?
Yeah, for sure. It's an unfortunate situation. I do think the root of it is what you said, which is the Libertarian Party seems to be controlled by people who are pretty left-wing. And there's this hive mind among people on the left where they can't encounter or engage with certain types of right-wing thought. So I don't actually see these people as my enemies. They've kind of chosen to make me one, in which case, of course, I will fight you for what I believe in. The New Hampshire movement's a little bit different. We have this free state movement here. We have, I think it's the most successful libertarian movement in the country, not trying to drag South Carolina. It's a great state too, but we have a Rothbardian ANCAP who is the House Majority Leader. He's likely to be Speaker of the House next year. We have people in the Senate. We have radical school choice, incredible gun freedoms, food freedoms. We're leading in all these areas. We're cutting taxes, year after year after year. And it's led to, people kind of being bolder. LPNH is a little bit loud. It's a little bit offensive at times, but it's wholly within the libertarian sphere, and it plays an important role in the overall sort of ecosystem of institutions that exists here. We didn't always toe the LP line. The LP likes to play things in a certain way, but we're unequivocally libertarians. I would say we're right-wing libertarians, but we're unequivocally libertarians.
Yeah.
We believe in all the core libertarian ideas about things being voluntary and government being as small as possible. If we can get all the way to nothing, that'd be great, but certainly as small as we can make it. And we're, so this is what we believe. But what it really was, I think they made it about this Trump endorsement that was done by a completely different leadership team. We actually passed a resolution last night to make it clear that we don't stand by that. But I think really it's about the way that we talk on social media. And so this is an attempt of LP National to be policing the speech of all 50 states in terms of how they attempt to make their affiliates grow. I think it's a very bad precedent. And what we're doing in New Hampshire is clearly working for us. As you said, we're the largest on social media. I think Tennessee is now in second ahead of Texas, but we're still more than twice the size of Tennessee. Tennessee's on our side, by the way. And we have the most Libertarian Party members per capita of any state by more than 10%. And so it's like what we're doing is working, and they don't like that it's working. And so they do what leftists do, is they ban and they censor rather than engaging in discourse or communication.
At first, I wanted to go through a bird's eye view of everything and your personal history. Where did you move from? Was it Philadelphia or New York?
I lived in Philadelphia before. I had been to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. It was the first time I was on a plane in my life, so I have a very strong memory of going down to.
I apologize.
See my whole family.
I'm sorry.
As a 10-year-old, I had a great time.
Good.
I was watching Bob Murphy's podcast when he interviewed you, and you mentioned Ayn Rand. Was Ayn Rand your first libertarian influence, or what were your influences early on?
It's the first probably book I could point to. I was on the internet from an early era. I was on the internet in like 1991, 1992 when I was like 7 and 8 years old. And I was a kind of precocious kid who started engaging, not like I was talking to the adults at that age, but the internet was like much more libertarian the early era of the internet was very libertarian. And so I was exposed to libertarian arguments and libertarian thinking. I couldn't point to like specific people, but like, even like where I heard of the Free State Project originally was an old tech website called Slashdot, was the first time I ever read about the Free State, project. And so I heard all these arguments that were almost certainly synthesized from other libertarian thinkers, just being given by other people on the internet. But I did read Rand when I was 16 or 17, and I definitely liked that. I read, one of the other earlier books I read was Capitalism and Freedom by Milton Friedman. And that was on, economics, which also, I was reading this stuff as a teenager, and so this stuff clicked with me from a pretty young age.
I heard on another podcast, I'm one of the only atheists in the South Carolina Libertarian Party, and I saw that you were an atheist and didn't know if that was an Ayn Rand influence from when you were a teenager.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very interested in what's true. I've been interested in science for a long time. I did get a degree in computer science, but I also got a degree in physics, and physics is what I thought I would do for a long time. And my interest in physics was, I want to understand how the universe works. I want to understand how things, work in this real way. And I do struggle believing certain religious beliefs, but I've also come to really appreciate what religion offers society. So I'm not like really a loud atheist. I don't even know if I would be considered an atheist versus an agnostic. Those labels don't mean too much to me. To me, there's no explanation out there. Part of the reason I got into physics, again, was I wanted to understand the truth. There's no answer in science, right? The most fundamental question, why is there something and not nothing, is not answered by science. That science doesn't have the answer.
There's no answer because it's all done with mirrors.
That might be more of a philosophical David Hume sort of thing. It did stand out that I guess it's physicist Jeremy Kauffman. Were you a double major?
That's right. I was a double major in physics and computer science. Yeah.
Oh man, incredible! So people will not have you confused with Andy Kaufman, who is Latka Gravis on Taxi. So
we have some similarities too. I play a little bit of a character at times to accomplish an end. Not just I want to be clear, I'm never doing stuff just to bother people. There's always a point to what I'm doing. So I'm not there to just be a character or to do a comedy routine. I'm ultimately attempting to engage in persuasion.
Well, I've just noticed.
I've learned.
Yeah, you're interesting. I mean, you make your speech interesting. You the things you do are interesting. You're not for the type of education you have, which is very dry. You have a lot of personality and a lot of, I guess, would say just humor, and you bring a lot of character to your speech, and that's what makes it interesting and drives people to actually engage and listen to you.
Well, that's part of the whole state autonomy thing. New Hampshire and Maine and Tennessee are going to be one way. Indiana and Louisiana are going to be another way, and you don't micromanage them.
Yeah, exactly.
Like other old farts, I get up at 4 a.m. in the morning.
That's the P.
And I listen to Twitter, and I love the LPNH post because it kind of gets the blood going in the morning. You know, it's not tame; it's wild. I love it.
Yeah, well, that's right, and we're part of the coalition here. I will say the movement here is very Christian. Like the other LPNH, people think I make all the posts. I make, probably under 50% of the posts. And so it's a coalition here. It's not just me.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Christians in the coalition. The account has been posting, a number of Christian takes during Pride Month, which I fully support. And I haven't seen a non-Christian society be better than a Christian society. So as an empiricist, it seems better for me to live in a Christian society than not.
I did want to circle back to the Free State Project and LP New Hampshire and everything, but I wanted to bring up a Library, Odyssey, and Top Score. Was a Top Score the first business you created, and is that the one you sold?
I did. That was my first business that was somewhat successful or reasonably successful. And so I've kind of been I didn't know that entrepreneurship was a thing. This is something that it wasn't presented to me on the menu of options. I had to kind of figure it out for myself. I think actually there probably is some room for improvement in terms of how kids can be educated and taught that, hey, you can just make stuff happen. You can just do things yourself. I had a natural entrepreneurial streak. Like I was making money as a young kid. I actually started my first business when I was 16 years old, selling like MMO goods and all this stuff.
Wow.
But, I built a software as a service company in my 20s. I scaled it quite a bit, and I later sold it. And then I did Library and Odyssey after that. Well, the early days, actually, I was doing both of them concurrently, but Library was taking up all my brain power, so I stepped away from the Top Score project.
I skipped the Frisbee thing and the 800 envelope.
Yeah. Hoffman and I all Hoffman and I did was cocaine and pot. Yeah.
People were mocking me for the MMO thing, but I think if you've ever tried to lead a guild raid, you know that takes real skill. Yeah.
Okay, on Free State Project, this is cool because it ties in. I see in 2001 it was founded. In 2003, they picked New Hampshire. By 2016, they had 20,000 signers, and in 2018, you joined the board. Is 6,000 the modern number for how many people live there?
Yeah, that number is pretty debated. I think it's undercounted. So my guess is that it's 10,000 or more, but it's very difficult to get an accurate.
Okay, that ties in with the foundational philosophical overall differences with other states. I noticed you've mentioned the concentration strategy because you have the Free State Project and other historical examples such as the Amish, Mormons, Orthodox Hasidic Jews, early Zionist settlements, and how that affects their strategies in that area. What is your overall approach and strategy versus other states like Tennessee because you have the Free State Project?
The movement started much more agnostic about how it would succeed. And in the early days, we even had people getting elected as Democrats. I think the Free State movement is kind of an exception to, is it Conquest Second Law, where everything gets left-wing if it's not explicitly right-wing? I think the movement here has actually drifted more right-wing because all of the successes happened inside of the Republican Party. The Republicans have been very welcoming to Free Staters coming in and running as Republicans. There's this partnership between sort of, and I want to be clear, we don't control the Republican Party. We're like a third to a half of it. Yeah. But there's this partnership between the Liberty wing and the sort of non-Liberty wing. We do things that can be at times hard for libertarians who want to get things 100% their way and can be like ornery, but there's a lot of like behind the scenes cooperation where we're not getting what we want every term, but I like to call it the Liberty ratchet. We make sure things move in the Liberty direction, at least a little bit. And hopefully that continues to change the demographics of the state and the whole movement continues to accelerate. Persuasion, this idea that we're going to persuade people into being libertarians, I don't want to talk people out of it. I think it's a valuable service to try, but I also think, again, like empirically, it hasn't really worked. But there are enough of us, there are millions of us across America and the world, and if millions of people have a belief set and they're willing to fight for it, they're generally able to get it. And some of the groups that you named are examples of this. David Friedman, who I'm a big fan of, likes to say that the Amish are the most successful anarchists in the world.
Yeah.
And that's because they don't have to do the draft and they don't have to pay into Social Security. And they got those carve-outs from the federal government by standing as a bloc and refusing to give in.
Are the Amish and like the Mennonites the only exception? I mean, the other ones on like social.
I don't know all the exceptions off the top of my head. I just know that the Amish are an exception.
When I was the vice chairman of the Republican Liberty Caucus, one of my friends was a guy named Aaron Day, and he was from New Hampshire, a very dynamic person. Is he a part of your movement?
Aaron is a free stater. Aaron and I would have our disagreements, although I don't think he's a bad guy. Aaron has very, very much, kind of gone his own way, and he hasn't always embraced the idea of working within the Republican Party. He feels the Republican Party is not giving the Liberty Wing enough, and he thinks, we shouldn't be cooperating with them as much as we are.
His big thing was medical freedom.
Yeah, and we are good on medical. We are good on medical freedom. I think we're continuing to get better. We just passed all of this great right to try legislation so that you'll be able to take innovative medical treatments. You have more control and choice over the types of medicines that you take. The vaccine requirements for kids are, weak or getting weaker in terms of what requirements there are with schools. So, I think this is an area we're doing well in.
My dad's from Manchester, New Hampshire. Is New Hampshire overall more of a blue state or more purple, or where does it lean overall?
I would say it's purple. It's an interesting phenomenon where the entire state government is controlled by Republicans. So we have a Republican Senate, we have a Republican House, we have a Republican governor, and we also have this thing called the Executive Council, which is part of the executive branch. That's all Republicans. Our federal delegates are blue. They are Democrats. Funnily enough, while you mentioned Aaron Day, Aaron Day is actually kind of the reason why we don't have a Republican senator. And this is an area where I think Aaron makes a mistake here. Not trying to say he's a bad guy, but, Aaron went out of his way and sunk a bunch of money, running as a third party, and we lose a Republican Senate race by, 500 votes or 1,000 votes or something like this. And it's just not clear to me that the Democrat is better. That's not me saying the Republican is great, but since we mostly get stuff done with the Republican Party, I'm interested in cooperating with them, not because I like everything that they do, but if they're willing to pass our, more radical bills, then, I can hold my nose and vote for a moderate.
Yeah, that's something that every third party has to worry about. Are you going to split the vote and get the enemy in there? It's definitely a concern.
And this idea, I've gotten more skeptical as I've gotten older. This is a change in my own perspective, so I certainly can understand the other side of this one, but this idea that they'll learn and adopt, when Aaron ran this race 10 years ago, the idea was, the Republicans will learn from this and they'll make sure not to, piss off the Liberty Wing in the future. And it's not clear to me that this happened. It's not clear. You can occasionally take your ball and go home, but if you try to take your ball and go home all of the time, they're not, you're not going to be welcome in the coalition anymore. And I think this is something that libertarians struggle with. This has been an unpopular take, but I'll give it here. I love Massey. I wish he had won. I think he did a little bit too much of this and it cost him, and that's not an endorsement of it costing him. I want to be clear, and I would have no problem saying Aaron Day would be better in the Senate than Kelly Ayotte. I'm not, this isn't anti the spirit of these people. I just think it can be a bad strategy that backfires.
Yeah. Nicholas Fuente is doing the same thing nowadays. He's telling everybody, he's a hard right
Yeah, I think this
guy.
is stupid. Yeah.
He's telling everybody to vote Democrat.
Yeah, I think this doesn't work. I don't think this works as a strategy. I understand the frustration it comes from, but I don't think it works.
Before we go to LPNH, I wanted to mention some of the stats on New Hampshire. So Cato has New Hampshire ranked as the #1 state for freedom. There's the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance that gives updates on legislators. There's 40 free state legislators, 100 liberty legislators. You mentioned Jason Osborne. He's a Rothbardian. He's the House Majority Leader. New Hampshire has the most machine gun ownership per capita. They have liberalized knife laws. There's been gun law nullification, seatbelt laws, vaccines, home food sales, home brewing, even like auto insurance exemptions. What's the case for someone outside of New Hampshire to move to New Hampshire?
Happiness is a warm machine gun.
Yeah. So I think there's a number of cases. This is certainly, I think, on the margin, we're the freest state. And so if that is what it's about for you, I think New Hampshire offers that. It might sound weird for me to say it, but I actually don't think that's the best reason. On this, we're still subject to federal laws. On the scale of freedom that exists in the world or in America, it's true that New Hampshire is more free, but, in terms of what's possible, maybe we're 5% closer to the finish line. We're still pretty far away. A lot of the bad aspects of government still exist here, and I wouldn't want to be on here and lie about that. I think the two best things that we have here is, one, there's this movement that's actually making progress where, I feel like every day I wake up with a spring in my step that we're dancing down the field. And that's a much different psychological feeling than feeling like you're losing all the time. And the happiest times in my life have been when I am, sort of moving positively towards this transcendental or like this goal in the distance, and I'm making progress towards that day after day. Often when you catch the thing, you're not as happy as when you were chasing the thing, and so there's a lot of satisfaction that comes from this feeling that we're making progress in this positive way. There are setbacks at times too, but on the whole, I feel like we're making progress. Any average day, we're making progress. The other thing, yeah, go ahead. No, I'll come back to the other one. Say what you want to say about this.
So basically, in sociology, they have organizational theory, and South Carolina is not the same as New Hampshire, but it seems like the Libertarian Party does what the Reform Party did and the Green Party does, where you're basically doing everything backwards, or almost like an overpowered HOA. So you have all this administrative labor and no attention or influence. And historical examples where they've been successful left and right, like abolitionism, suffrage, prohibition, they start with having influence and then they scale it up to organizations. And then the final part is electoral politics. And when you do that backwards, you end up where we're spending all this time, money, energy, labor, and you're getting like 0.7% of the vote.
You're talking about the South Carolina Libertarian Party, right?
Basically,
it's only recently been a political party. For as most of its history, it's been a literary society.
Yeah.
That's got to change if they're going to have any kind of leverage in the political arena at all.
You're talking about when you have Republicans, you have similar ideas, and you do coalitions, and you're nudging them. Like in your speech, your chair speech, where you're talking about achievable goals and not having these unreasonable unicorn fantasy goals, and then you spend all this time, energy, and labor into
Working with Republicans in South Carolina is a losing proposition. We have the largest herd of rhinos this side of Africa in South Carolina. And they populate our state legislature.
And
Steve,
and
stop sugarcoating it.
This is what makes it hard. And you reference what I said in my speech, and I'll repeat it a little bit here, which is you have to find tangible goals that you can make progress towards. If your movement is making progress, then status inside of the movement can be awarded based off of the ability to make progress against your enemies. If you're not making progress, status inside of the movement comes from being the most pure or from punching your own teammates. And this is what a lot of we see inside of the LP is there's not an ability to defeat the enemy. And so people end up playing these status games inside of the movement to be king of the theater kid club because that's all that's achievable. These people can't go out and make the work. They can't achieve their views in the world, but they can be the most pure, perfect libertarian inside of the Libertarian Party. And so more people end up playing the second game than the first game. And that is, how a movement kind of ends up dying.
What version would you do in another state like Tennessee?
Yeah. So you can either try to find specific issues where there's a lot of buy into a particular issue and you can potentially get Republicans and Democrats on your side. I don't know what it's like in other states, but, at least here we represent a block of people. That block of people can come out to testify. They can, make posts on social media and so on. And so the politicians recognize that there's this block of sort of rabid supporters that either will be with them or against them, depending on the stances that they take. And politicians, a lot of politicians aren't ideologues the way that we are, where we have genuine philosophies. They are populists, who want to be popular, who wanted to be elected student council, who want to say what will get them elected. And so if they sense that there's this energy, they'll follow it, for better or worse. This is what's bad about politicians to some degree, but, you can also take advantage of it.
Well, it seems like
I wanted to mention, good. I wanted to mention one other thing from the previous answer about why to live in New Hampshire, because I actually think this is the best reason, and so I did want to mention it on the show, which is, I feel that our broader culture, I've heard it called like a monoculture, that this monoculture is subsuming everything, even some of the islands that you mentioned earlier, like I'm not an expert on the Mormon religion, but my understanding is like Mormons are getting, more sucked into TikTok and having less children, and so we need resistance to this. And I want my values. I'm not, unlike some boomers, I'm not agnostic about whether my values propagate to my children. I believe my values are correct, at least directionally, and I want them to succeed in the world. I want to pass them on to my kids. And so the climate for raising your children here, where you can have not just the values inside your own household, but you can have peer groups for your kids, schools for your kids, where there's, aligned values, aligned teachers. This to me is a really, really big thing that's hard to get elsewhere. There's some people who moved out here recently who are, very successful entrepreneurs out of Silicon Valley, very wealthy. And, they came to New Hampshire because they said, there's nowhere, you can't buy this. Like, it's not, you can't buy it anywhere else. And that to me is, both, it's important for our future. This isn't a battle that's going to go on. Like, I don't think we're going to be done this battle in a day.
Sounds like you'd be a good spokesman for the Judeo-Christian ethic.
Yeah. I'm supportive of that, idea. And we have, it's a majority Christian movement, but we definitely have a diversity of opinions. We even have some Norse pagans, who I think are perfectly compatible.
Let's hear it for Freya.
Okay, transitioning to LPNH, I saw in 2021 in March, I'm guessing it was like a Mises takeover of LPNH, and then by June, Bishop Henchman, who was the national chair, did some sort of secret registration of another New Hampshire party, and then he ended up resigning. What's the whole situation around that?
Yeah, so that was the first battle, and we won that disaffiliation battle. I think we'll win this one too, and that's correct. So I would say it was a little bit more complex than just Mises. I would say it was like a Mises and Free Stater alliance. So I became aware. A year or two prior to that, I donated my own money to. I was like a major sponsor of the LPNH convention, and I gave a short speech and talked to the members about like having LPNH support the Free State movement, and there was like shocking resistance to this. I didn't know LPNH that well. I've lived in New Hampshire for around 10 or 11 years, so I'd maybe been here for 3 years when I did this, and I wasn't paying a ton of attention to LPNH, but I thought for sure, like, this is the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire. Of course, they're going to be friendly towards the Free State movement, and I came to them like, how could we cooperate? How could we work together? And there was like a shocking resistance to this, like, we don't want to work with Republicans. And I'm like, dude, this guy went to the Mises school. He considers himself an anarcho-capitalist. Like he could quote Rothbard off the top of his head. You're saying you don't want to support him because he's a Republican? Like this, this was an inconceivable idea to me. And so the resistance that I got there, like, kind of animated me. I saw the Mises thing happening. I went to Mises leadership. I said, let's work together. And I gave some money to Mises, so I don't want to like say I was like not a Mises guy, but I was coming at this from the Free State angle from day one. And so both Mises brought in people through Dave Smith, people I had never met, so I want to give them a lot of credit for turning people out. But I also brought in a bunch of people, from my network, and we came in and we, took over LPNH in early 2021. We immediately started tweeting and posting in a way that they didn't like. Mm-hmm. And so they took their first shot. They did it very sloppily. It was both morally wrong and possibly illegal. Joe Bishop Henchman had to resign. He resigned rather than get investigated for what he did. And I think this one is also going to backfire on them. I don't think they did it in a legal manner, and I don't think they did it in a way that will help the organization succeed. And I think it's gonna be yet another mistake from the behalf of the LP.
Okay, talking about social media, you mentioned persuasion, getting attention, using humor in a strategic, tactical way. And I was looking through ChatGPT, and they had obvious left-wing groups like PETA and Code Pink do things to get attention. And it's part of our culture, having sort of blue comedy like Ari Shaffir and South Park and Louis C.K., et cetera. What is the philosophy behind how you use social media?
Yeah, I want to be, and we potentially made mistakes over the years, so I wouldn't even defend. I wouldn't defend 100% of anything I've even said, let alone.
I couldn't do it for myself, so I was going to say you'd impress me if you could.
Yeah, but I certainly can't do it for the party. Like, well, look, I said earlier we talked about entrepreneurship. Like, I apply the ideas of entrepreneurship to politics, which means you're performing experiments, you see what works, you see what doesn't, and that means you're going to sometimes perform an experiment like, well, that was a bad idea.
That's a Thursday.
Yeah.
Tying into the FBI video, which is completely insane, and you did that entire thing just perfectly.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And that's an example where, like, and by the way, it's not, LPNH has never, we don't know why the FBI was there. They never said, and LPNH takes the policy of not disclosing who made specific tweets, which is a policy I'm going to stand by on the show.
Yeah.
Well, it's nice. It gives us, because look, really, again, that's not me saying I did them all. There really are, the people think I made ones that I genuinely did not make. But that's an example of one where, like, look, that showed people, we can debate what led up to that, but that was an incident that demonstrated how you can stand up to the federal government. It helped grow my following and to a substantial degree, helped me get on a whole bunch of shows, propagate the ideas, and so that was one where it probably ended up working out for the best in terms of the end result. And I also think, in terms of what we want to achieve, like, I want to signal bravery, that I'm not going to compromise, that I'm willing to fight for what I, believe in. And that is, even if I'm a little bit of a caricature of it at times, but that, I'm going to go to the mat and I'm going to fight. I'm not going to be a coward. I'm not going to adhere to, what the regime considers
you
correct.
Don't want to make a coalition and let everybody like you, and don't offend them. You got to be nice, and maybe we should strategize about this and sit back and think and not do it right away. Let's all talk about this. Let's have a conference about this. Yeah,
I liked where you and Tom Woods talked about the future of the LP. It was very interesting, very enlightening conversation.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's tough to know what you do with this thing because, and look, the entire reason I even got involved in LPNX is like, look, I recognize as someone who isn't bad at marketing that the thing that's called the Libertarian Party is going to have an outsized impact on what people think the word libertarian means.
Yeah.
We understand the distinction of big L versus small L, but that distinction is beyond like half of the entire population already.
Well, so we all agree all political parties, including our own, suck. But
well, you obviously have a very sophisticated audience.
I wanted to go into the specifics of the chair run you did and some of the incidents. So in your speech, you said the LP has gone 55 years and has never won a competitive head-to-head race. They burn millions of dollars, thousands of hours, give false hope to everyone. You mentioned Project Archimedes that Dosbach here was part of. In the New Hampshire strategy works, your team players. You need to stop telling people they're going to win the next election and burn them out. They need to set reasonable goals that you can actually achieve them and grow. When you mean small goals, small achievements, do you mean like when New Hampshire passes gun nullification laws or making coalitions, or what do you mean?
Anything that your guys will feel like is a victory. Like you guys, there's a guy I like a lot here in New Hampshire who says whoever's having the most fun wins. And I think there's something to this, that people don't want to come and feel like they're losing and that all this sucks, and so find something that you can achieve. You can feel, honestly, hopefully it's a real achievement, but even just feeling like you achieved something will at least help you grow, so I don't know what's feasible. It depends on what issues are animating people there. But like something that's animating people that you can feel like you've achieved, and then people will want to bring in, their friends or people. They'll post pictures of social media about their victories, and like, this is what will bring people into your, into your.
What happened with this office you shared with Sarwark?
That's a story.
You started,
a lot of people don't know.
with that.
I was trolling him a little bit there, but with the point, it's not a false story. I will say I don't generally, I may be provocative, but I don't generally say things that aren't true. It was such a disillusionment to me because, like, look, I was an internet libertarian before I moved to New Hampshire. Like, I was not actively in politics. I was persuaded by the ideas via books, and there were some weird forums I was on the internet where everyone was very smart. And so I was like not checked into LP stuff. I part of why I came to New Hampshire was I was reaching the time in my life when I wanted to have a family, and I thought that this was a good place to do it, and it has been. But I came here, I moved to New Hampshire with no kids. I have 4 kids now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so that was why I ended up here. I've been here for a couple of years, maybe 2 years. And I had an office for library, and Nick Sarwark was moving here. I didn't know anything about him. I didn't pay attention. Again, I was not paying attention to LP stuff. Yeah. And I was like, oh, well, he's the chair of the Libertarian Party. This must be a great guy. He's the chair of the National Party at the time. Yeah. So he was the chair of the National Libertarian Party, and he moved to New Hampshire, and I had a couple of extra offices in my office space, and so I said, sure, well, why don't you rent an office? And we would hang out during lunch. I'd probably play ping pong against Nick Sarwark at least 20 times, and we would talk about stuff. And like, I slowly realized, I was like, this guy is not the type of libertarian that I am at all. But I didn't know it going into it. And, he was just so, and this was of course during actually, I'm sorry, I must've been in New Hampshire for 3 or 4 years, because this was the summer of Floyd, was one of the was when a lot of the disagreements started happening. It's like, this guy's like really woke. I don't agree with him, and he didn't want to engage in this stuff publicly as well, which is what I was asking him. I was like, look, I think at a minimum the Libertarian Party should be showcasing both sides of the debate. It shouldn't just be on the woke side of this stuff. I think I offered him something like $10,000. I said, I'll make a donation of $10,000 to the Libertarian Party if you and James Lindsay, have a public conversation. I have more mixed feelings about James Lindsay than I did in 2020. But he was very much one of the best guys fighting this stuff in 2020. Yeah. And Nick declined that. And I just learned more and more about the LP from him firsthand, and it was not. It definitely was not like my school of libertarianism. No. And part of the problem with these people, I've seen this here, like the left wing is just much more universalist about things. And so they struggle to even cooperate with people who don't have their own universalistic, take on all of this stuff. Because to me, if you're a left winger, if some of these people, like I like to say that Chase Oliver would be the best Democrat. Like if Chase Oliver was in the Senate, he'd be the best Democrat in the Senate, right? Like, I don't have a problem saying this, even as someone who's not a huge fan of this guy, he would be the best Democrat in the Senate.
So back in 2008, when I joined the LP, when I was a teenager, Bob Barr got 0.4% of the vote. And when I just started getting active the last 2 years, Chase Oliver, 16 years later, got exactly 0.4% of the vote. Now, on the convention, what was the whole issue with the sign theft and taking materials off your booth? I know they took your vertical sign at one point, and they were taking huge handfuls of materials meant to be given out from your booth. What happened with that whole situation?
Yeah, so there's sort of two separate incidents. One, although they ended up involving the same person, but that only came to a head like later that we knew it was the same person. So on the Saturday night of convention, a woman and a man were captured on security footage taking our state affiliate banner and maybe some other things, but definitely the state affiliate banner, and putting it in they took it and destroyed it. And, and when I attempted, we didn't get that footage until maybe 3 p.m. on Sunday. When I attempt to bring it to the floor, they kicked me out. And they didn't, and another member of our party also attempted to bring it to the floor, and they didn't allow it to be heard. So this was the LNC, in my opinion, collaborating to not let evidence of an unequivocal theft. I mean, we had security footage from the hotel that had been gotten by the CTO of the Libertarian Party. He was a neutral party, but he wasn't a delegate. He wasn't allowed to introduce it. A delegate has to go up and basically introduce it. And they didn't allow this to happen. And this is what's crazy to me for these left-wing people, is having certain social beliefs or being willing to say certain words means that you can violate their property rights. Like, these people are not nearly as, they like to say it's just the nap, but they obviously, don't consider it aggression to violate the property rights of people if they're, if they say no.
On the LNC vote, so on May 25th, there was a vote on disaffiliating. There was 15 for, 2 voted against, and 1 abstained. Shaw brought up a amendment to create an investigative committee. Everyone completely rejected it. The amendment was rejected. There was no due process, no notice, no chance to respond. And this is the only time in 54 years that they've ever done that. Every single other example, such as New Mexico and Massachusetts, it was the state disaffiliating from national, not the other way around. What happened there?
That's right. And the way they did it, again, they can't, our arguments are good. We have reasons that we do what we do, that when people hear them, they're like, oh, that makes sense. That scares them, right? We are effectively saying we have a better way to accomplish the goals of this organization than you have. They are putting their roles in the organization above the goals of the organization. I forget the name of this. It's like the iron law of bureaucracy, which is the people who value their position in the bureaucracy more than the goals of the organization inevitably succeed. And so over time, an organization or an institution ends up being captured by people who are good at manipulating or managing the bureaucracy rather than accomplishing the institution's purported goals. And we see this in all kinds of institutions, not just the LP, but this is a great example of it, where they are optimizing for their positions against an entity that's good at accomplishing the institution's purported goals. And so that's why they won't let our arguments be heard. They're not interested in engaging in an exchange of ideas. All they can do is taboo and block and ban, because when a lot of people hear their arguments and our arguments, they like ours.
Jeremy mentioned that he had other commitments today, but I think you need to know that you have friends in low places. So we'd like to tell you what we're doing right here.
That's why they call it the Low
County,
Country, yeah.
South Carolina.
That's right. Well, look, I will tell you, there's a tremendous business opportunity for someone from South Carolina to come up here and open a great barbecue restaurant. Okay, we have some. We don't have enough. Okay, and there's a big entrepreneurship opportunity for one of you guys to come up here and show us how it's done in the Northeast.
Okay, and 2 things just to end this. We're trying to pass a resolution in Horry County. I know Maine passed one already. It's probably going to be hard at the state level in South Carolina, but I know Tennessee was indirectly supporting it, and on your website you had over 1,000 endorsements. On this rejected amendment, just to end it out, they rejected an investigation, a committee, giving any evidence. This was all over something from a XCOM from 2 years ago. And the same people who are saying that theft doesn't violate the non-aggression principle are all looking the other way. They don't like your Twitter or your Ari Shafir type trolling, but I think this is a due process issue. Basically, the whole point and philosophy of due process for over 2,000 years since Socrates is to protect the people you hate, you despise, you disagree with, the people who are unpopular. Those are the exact people most likely to be denied it. There's classic examples of the ACLU in Skokie, Illinois, defending Nazi rallies in a town with Holocaust survivors. Voltaire defended persecuted Protestants. John Adams defended British soldiers who attacked American colonists in the middle of the American Revolutionary War. And the classic libertarian position is to defend due process for people who are unpopular. It's sort of a litmus test. And these people who are looking the other way or sitting on their hands, or some of them even supporting it, it is totally unacceptable. And this could absolutely happen to different counties and states in the future. This is total retaliation. I know your money has flown up over the past couple of days. Where can people go to support New Hampshire?
SaveLPNH.com has more details about the case, and we would love it if people could make a donation. We do plan on fighting legally. That was an excellent speech, by the way. I'm going to crib some of that probably in the future. I agree with you completely. You're clearly a man of similar spirit to myself and the people here, because I agree with everything you just said. We will be fighting it. I think one of the things we're actually just started, I should have gotten this going sooner, but I actually started this morning of getting people from aligned LPs who are in position of leaderships there to we're getting them in a chat room to be drafting some of these resolutions, because you don't have to agree with everything LPNH said to say that both states need due process and states need to have autonomy to be doing their own messaging. That is not the role of national to be telling states how to message. I think it is fine to have a problem with LPNH endorsing Trump 2 years ago, but that was not current leadership. They're disaffiliating, hundreds of members who don't endorse that action. The current ExCom doesn't endorse that action. So why are all these people being punished? It's obviously not about Trump. It's about policing the affiliate speech. And this is something that should be offensive to, the vast swaths of the Libertarian Party. And so I want to be getting people who agree on that together, whether they agree with LPNH or not.
Thank you for coming on. You're definitely one of the biggest guests we've ever had. And hopefully in a few months, we can have you back on to give us an update.
For sure. We need a whole South Carolina delegate trip up here. You guys come up in a group and do a little joint vacation and check out some of the things, here, meet some of the people here. It'd be a really good time.
Oh, if you said joint vacation, that got Hoffman on the bus already. Yeah. Thank you so much. This has been Microphone Monkeys, and everybody's going to be a little surprised because this is a little bit of an earlier release than normal. We will not have the regular Thursday drop for our listeners that catch up with us. Just to let you know, in this month of June, we all have a tin cup in hands because we're trying to get as much money as we can to satisfy our habits here at Liberty Crack Media. So if you can, go to our website, libertycrackmedia.com, and drop into that menu button, grab that Project 2027. And that's what we call it, Project 2027. We're trying to raise enough funds to kind of get us into next year so we can keep growing our podcasts and our radio station and everything else that we've got going on. And also in this month, we are going to be having a live mini YouTube marathon on the 14th. I know everybody's going to be having their Flag Day trees decorated and the Flag Day presents under the tree. But if you have a few moments, it's going to be from 10 o'clock in the morning till 6 p.m. on YouTube. And we're going to have the Microphone Monkeys. We're going to have the Hoff. We're going to have a bunch of special guests. We're hopefully going to have a lot of fun. And who knows, maybe even this fella, Jeremy Kauffman, will call in and raise some hell with us. That would be great. And I just wanted to also ask, it's savelpnhnation.com.
No, just savelpnh.com.
Savelpnh.com. Folks, you don't have to remember it. You can go to our show notes, and we're going to have that link right there. And again, thank you. And this has been another wonderful, exciting, different type of Microphone Monkeys.
Got the gold, no taxes to meet. Free to speak and free to trade. Markets up, no need for no red tape to tie us down. Private roads all through the the town.